The florist answered on the second ring. "Bennett wedding," she said, bright and busy. "We're so excited. We just need to confirm the final balance on your card before we lock in the order." "My card," I said. "Yes, Claire Bennett. Your sister listed you as the payer for everything. The flowers, the arch, the centerpieces. It's $12,400. I sat very still at my kitchen table. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "How many other vendors did my sister give my name to?" There was a pause. "I'm not sure I follow. My name, my phone number, as the person paying." "Well," she said carefully, "we got your information from the wedding planner's shared sheet, so I'd assume most of them." I thanked her. I hung up. And then I opened my laptop and I started writing down names. By the end of that night, I had called every single vendor on my sister's $93,000 wedding, and not one of them charged my card a cent. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense unless you understand how we got here. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old. I have a younger sister named Madison. She's 27. Growing up, there were two versions of our family. There was the version everyone outside saw, and there was the version we lived in. The outside version was simple. 2 daughters. A nice enough house. A mother named Linda who told the neighbors she was blessed with her girls. The inside version was different. In the inside version, there was Madison. And then there was me. Madison was the one with the sparkle. That's the word my mother used. Sparkle. From the time Madison could walk, she was the main event. The recitals, the pageants, the birthday parties that took over the whole backyard. I was the other one. I want to be fair here. I'm not telling you I had a terrible childhood. I had food. I had a bed. I wasn't beaten or starved. What I didn't have was attention, or money spent on me, or the assumption that my wants counted. When I was 9, I wanted to take piano lessons. My mother said the family budget was tight. That same month, Madison started competitive dance. 3 days a week, with a costume allowance. When I was 14, I needed a graphing calculator for school. $40. I was told to ask my teacher if I could borrow one. That same week, Madison got a phone upgrade because her old one embarrassed her. There's one memory I come back to more than the others. I was 11. It was December. Madison had a winter dance recital, and the whole family went. My mother bought Madison a new outfit, did her hair, took 2 rolls of film just of her. That same week, I was in a school spelling competition. I made it to the final round. I came in second out of the whole district. Nobody came. I told my mother the date 3 times. She said she'd try. On the morning of, she said Madison had a thing, and that I understood, didn't I, because I was the mature one. I stood on that little stage and looked at the empty chairs where my family should have been, holding my second-place ribbon, and I smiled for the photo the teacher took. Someone had to. I still have that ribbon. I don't really know why. Maybe to remind myself that I was always going to have to be my own audience. And here's the part that kept me hooked for 31 years. It wasn't all cold. Once, when I was 12 and homesick with a bad fever, my mother sat on the edge of my bed for an entire afternoon. She put a cool cloth on my forehead. She told me a story about her own mother. For a few hours, I was the only one in the room. I held on to that afternoon for decades. I built a whole hope on it. I told myself, see, she does love you, she just shows it differently, you just have to catch her at the right moment. That single afternoon was the bait that kept me feeding the machine for the next 20 years. That's the thing nobody tells you about families like mine. It's never all bad. The little crumbs of warmth are exactly what keep you from walking away. I noticed these things. I want you to know that. I wasn't oblivious. I just learned very early that pointing them out only made things worse. Because when I pointed them out, I became the problem. Why do you always have to make everything a competition, Claire? Your sister is more sensitive than you. She needs more. Not everyone can be as independent as you. Be grateful you don't need us. That last one was my mother's favorite. Be grateful you don't need us. She said it like a compliment. I learned to hear it for what it was. It was permission. Permission to give me nothing. So I left. The day after I turned 18, I packed 2 bags and I moved into a rented room across town. I had a job at a grocery store and $400 saved. My mother's reaction tells you everything. She didn't cry. She didn't ask me to stay. She said, "Well, you always thought you were too good for us." And she shut the door. Here is the part of the story where I'm supposed to tell you I struggled for years. And I did. But not in the way you might expect. I worked. That's the whole secret. I worked. And I didn't spend, and I didn't ask anyone for anything. I finished a 2-year degree at community college while working nights. Then I got a job in medical billing. Then a better one. Then I learned to manage the billing systems instead of just entering data. By 26, I was a systems manager. By 29, I had paid off my car, saved a real emergency fund, and bought a small condo with my own down payment. I remember the day I signed the closing papers. I sat in my empty new living room on the floor, because I didn't own a couch yet, and I ate takeout out of the container, and I cried. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind that comes when you've held your breath for a decade and you finally let it out. I didn't call anyone. That's the part that I notice now. I had just done the biggest thing of my life, and there was no one in my family I wanted to tell. Not because I was hiding it. Because I already knew the response. My mother would have asked what it cost, and then asked in the same breath whether I could help Madison with something. So I sat on my own floor in my own home and I celebrated alone. And honestly, it was enough. I had learned to make my own enough. Nobody helped me. I don't say that with bitterness. I say it because it matters for what comes next. Because I didn't have money handed to me. I built every dollar. Now, while I was building my quiet life, my family stayed in contact. Sort of. They called when they needed things. My mother called when the water heater broke. I sent $400. Madison called when her car got booted. I sent $200. My mother called when she was a little short on the property tax. I sent $600. I told myself this was family. I told myself this was what you do. The amounts were never huge on their own. $200 here, $400 there, $600 for the property tax. Spread out, they were easy to wave away. Each one felt small. Each one felt like the price of staying connected. But I keep a spreadsheet. That's the medical billing in me. I track everything. And one slow afternoon at work, out of curiosity, I added it all up. Every transfer I'd sent home over 7 years. It was a little over $31,000. $31,000. To a family that had told a 14-year-old to borrow a calculator. I sat with that number for a while. And then I closed the spreadsheet and I didn't look at it again because looking at it made me feel something I wasn't ready to feel yet. What I didn't see until much later was the pattern. They didn't call me to talk, they called me to collect. I was not a daughter or a sister to them, I was an account. And then Madison got engaged. The engagement was to a man named Trevor. Nice enough, came from a family with some money, the kind of family that owns a boat but complains about the marina fees. I met him exactly twice. The first time, at a family dinner I'd been guilted into attending, he shook my hand and called me the successful one. He said it like a compliment. But I'd heard that tone before. It was the same tone my mother used. It was the sound of someone deciding what I was for. The second time I met him, he asked me, casually over dessert, what I did for income. Not what I did for work, what I did for income. I should have understood right then where this was going. The whole family had already started seeing me not as a person at the table, but as a number sitting at the table. The wedding was the moment everything I'd been quietly avoiding finally arrived at my door. It started with a phone call from my mother. She was warmer than usual. That should have been my first warning. When my mother is warm, she wants something. "Claire, sweetheart," she said. "We need to talk about Madison's wedding." "Okay, it's going to be beautiful. Trevor's family expects a certain level of event, and you know how Madison is. She's always dreamed of this." "I know." "Well," a pause, "we were hoping you'd want to be part of making it special." "Part of it how?" She laughed, light and practiced. "Oh, you know, helping out. You've done so well for yourself, Claire. You don't have a family of your own pulling at your money. It only seems fair." There it was again. You don't have a family of your own. Said like an accusation, said like the life I built alone was a luxury they were entitled to spend. "How much are we talking?" I said. "We don't need to put a number on it." "How much, Mom?" She told me the wedding was going to cost around $93,000. I almost laughed. $93,000. For one day. "And you want me to pay for it," I said. "Not all of it," she said quickly. "Just the bulk. Trevor's family is covering the rehearsal dinner. We thought you could handle the rest." The rest. The rest of a $93,000 wedding. I want to tell you exactly what I said, because I've thought about it many times since. I said, "I'll think about it." I shouldn't have. I should have said no right there. But 31 years of training is hard to undo in one phone call. The reflex to keep the peace runs deep. So I said I'd think about it. And Madison took that as a yes. No, it was worse than that. Madison didn't wait for a yes at all. 2 weeks later, I started getting the calls. The first was from the venue. A coordinator, very polite, calling to confirm the deposit schedule for the payer, Claire Bennett. I thought it was a mistake. I told her I hadn't agreed to anything. She got flustered and said she'd check her notes. The second call was the florist, the one I told you about at the start. The third was a caterer, then a photographer, then a string quartet, then a bakery, then a dress shop, calling about alteration fees on a gown I'd never seen. Every single one of them had the same information. Claire Bennett, my phone number, my name, listed as the person paying for everything. And then the venue coordinator said the thing that turned my stomach cold. "We do have a card on file to hold the date," she said, ending in 4419. "We'll be running the deposit on Monday." 4419. That was my card, my actual card. It took me a second to understand how. And then I remembered, 2 years earlier, Madison's car had broken down on a trip, and she'd been stranded with a dead phone and no way to pay the tow. I'd read her my card number over the phone to get her home. One time, an emergency. She had saved it. And now, 2 years later, she had handed that number to a wedding venue to hold a date for a $93,000 event I had never agreed to pay for, and on Monday they were going to charge it. My sister had gone down the entire vendor list and written my name on all of it, and on at least one of them, she'd put a live card number that would actually run. She hadn't asked. She hadn't even told me. She had simply decided, and then built a $93,000 wedding on a foundation made of my money. Money I had never agreed to spend. I sat with that for one full evening. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Madison. I didn't scream. I made a list. I wrote down every vendor, every name, every phone number, every amount. And the next morning, calm as anything, I started making calls. Let me tell you how those calls went, because this is the part that matters. I called the venue first. "Hi," I said, "this is Claire Bennett. I'm calling about the Bennett-Reyes wedding. I understand I'm listed as the payer." "Yes, that's correct," the coordinator said. "I need to correct that. I have not authorized any payments. I am not the payer for this event. Please remove my name and my card information from your records immediately." There was a silence. "But the deposit is due, and I understand. But it will not be coming from me. I never agreed to it. If anyone gives you a card that they claim is mine, do not run it. It's not authorized." I made that same call 11 more times. The florist was second. She remembered me from before. "Oh, Miss Bennett, hi, so we just need the $12,400, I stopped her gently. I told her I would not be paying it, that I had never agreed to, and to remove my card. She was quiet for a second, and then she said, almost kindly, "Honey, can I ask, did your sister tell you about any of this?" And I said no. And she said, "I figured." Apparently, I wasn't the first family member she'd seen this happen to. The caterer was third. 41 place settings, a plated dinner, an open bar. $22,000. The man on the phone got irritated with me, like I was the one causing a problem. I stayed calm. I am not the payer. I never authorized this. Remove my information. He hung up on me. That was fine. The message was delivered. The photographer. The string quartet. The bakery, with its 4-tier cake and its sugar peonies. The dress shop, calling about alterations on a gown I had never seen and would never see. The lighting company. The rental company for 200 chairs and the linens. The bartending service. The day of coordinator, who was the one running the shared spreadsheet with my name on every line. 12 calls, each one the same. I am not the payer. I never authorized this. Remove my information. Then I made one more call. The most important one. I called my bank, and I had the card ending in 4419 canceled and reissued. New number. So that on Monday morning, when the venue tried to run $37,000 to hold a date I'd never agreed to, the charge would simply decline. That was the moment it was really over. Not the angry words, not the speeches, just a quiet 5-minute call to a bank, and a card that no longer existed. By the time I hung up the last call, every vendor on my sister's $93,000 wedding had been told the truth. The truth was simple. There was no money. There had never been any money. There was only my sister's assumption and my mother's entitlement and a wedding built on air. And here's the thing about a wedding built on air. It needs deposits to stay in the air. The deposits started coming due that week. I want to walk you through what happened next, because the collapse was almost quiet. Like a building that's been condemned for years finally settling into the ground. First, the venue called my sister. They wanted the deposit. The 40%, around $37,000, due to hold the date. 3 weeks before the wedding. Madison, of course, told them the payer would handle it. The venue told her the payer had explicitly removed herself and stated no payment was authorized. I imagine that was an interesting phone call for Madison. Then the florist called. Then the caterer. Then the photographer. Then the rental company about the chairs. One by one, the people my sister had promised my money to began asking my sister for money. Her money. Money she did not have, and money Trevor did not have, and money my mother certainly did not have. Because here's the thing nobody had wanted to say out loud. There was no plan B. There had never been a plan B. I was the plan. The entire $93,000 event had exactly one funding source, and that source had never agreed to fund it. My phone started ringing on a Thursday night. It was Madison. I let it go to voicemail. She called 4 more times. Then she switched to texts. The texts started confused. Claire, the venue is saying something weird. Can you call them? Then they got nervous. Claire, I think there's a mix-up with the vendors. Did you say something to them? Then they got angry. What did you do? They're all calling me. The venue wants $37,000 by Monday. Call ME. I read every one. I responded to none. Then came a longer one, late that night. Claire, I don't understand what I did. Why are you doing this to me? This is my wedding. Mom said you wanted to help. Everyone is going to think I lied to them. And I'll be honest, that one almost got me. Not because she sounded sorry she didn't, she sounded scared of being exposed. But there was a flicker in me, the old reflex that wanted to text back and fix it. I read it twice. Then I put the phone face down on the table and I made myself a cup of tea and I waited for the feeling to pass. It passed. The next morning, my mother called. I answered that one. I wanted to hear it. She didn't bother with warm this time. What is wrong with you? She said. The moment I picked up. No hello. Good morning, Mom. Don't you dare. Madison is hysterical. The vendors are calling her saying you canceled everything. Do you know what you've done? I didn't cancel anything, I said. I removed my name from payments I never agreed to make. You said you'd help. I said I'd think about it. And then before I'd even decided, Madison put my name and my card and my phone number on a $93,000 wedding. Without asking me. Without telling me. Because we're family. That's what family does. I let that sit for a second. No, I said. That's not what family does. Family asks. Family doesn't sign your name to a $100,000 bill behind your back. She switched tactics. Her voice cracked. The famous crack. Claire, please, the wedding is in 6 weeks. We can't lose the venue. We'll lose everything. Madison will be humiliated. Do you want your sister humiliated in front of Trevor's whole family? And I want to be honest with you about this moment. A part of me, the small 9-year-old part who wanted piano lessons, still wanted to fix it. Still wanted to be the good one. Still wanted, after all these years, to finally be enough. But I'm not 9 anymore. Mom, I said. I need to ask you a question, and I need you to answer it honestly. When I was 14 and I needed a $40 calculator, why did you tell me to borrow one? Silence, because money was tight, she said. And that same week you bought Madison a new phone. It's the same week, Mom. I remember it. I remember all of it. The piano lessons. The calculator. Every single time the answer for me was no, and the answer for her was yes. You're bringing up things from 20 years ago, I'm bringing up the pattern. Because the pattern never stopped. You taught Madison her whole life that my money is her money, that I exist to fund her, and she believed you so completely that she didn't even think she needed to ask me before spending $93,000 of it. So this is revenge, my mother said. You're punishing your sister. No, I said. This is the first time in 31 years I've simply declined to pay. That's all. I'm not stopping anything. I'm just not funding it. The wedding can absolutely happen. Madison can pay for it. Trevor can pay for it. You can pay for it. I'm simply no longer the family bank. After everything we did for you, she said. And that one almost made me laugh out loud. Everything they did for me. I thought about the spelling competition with the empty chairs, the calculator I had to borrow, the piano lessons that never happened, the $31,000 I'd quietly sent over 7 years to a family that couldn't be bothered to show up to a single thing I was proud of. Mom, I said, very softly, name one thing. Name one thing you did for me that you didn't do twice as much of for Madison. Take your time. The line was silent for a long moment. She hung up on me. I put the phone down. My hands were steady. For the first time in my life, I had said the word no to my family. And the world had not ended. The wedding did not happen at the $93,000 venue. It couldn't. The deposit was never paid, and the date released, and someone else booked it. But I want to be clear about something, because this is where people expect me to gloat, and I'm not going to. Madison still got married. She and Trevor had a wedding. But not right away, and not easily. When the $93,000 evaporated, so did a lot of the warmth from Trevor's side. I heard later that his family had quietly assumed the lavish wedding meant Madison's family had real money. The boat-owning people are very good at sniffing out who actually has it. Once it became clear the whole thing had been propped up on a sister who'd just walked away, the rehearsal dinner they'd generously offered to cover got noticeably smaller, and the questions about the budget got noticeably sharper. The man who'd once asked me what I did for income suddenly had a lot of opinions about doing things sensibly. To his credit, and I'll give him this, Trevor stayed. They downsized. They had a real wedding. At a community hall with about 60 people instead of 200. Trevor's family chipped in. Madison and Trevor paid for the rest themselves, on a budget like most people do. From what I heard, it was actually lovely. I wasn't invited. That part stung less than you'd think. The fallout in the family was loud at first and then very quiet. For about a month, I was the villain. The selfish sister. The one who ruined Madison's dream. My mother told that version to anyone who'd listen. An aunt I barely spoke to called to tell me I should be ashamed. A cousin sent me a long message about family loyalty. I didn't argue with any of them. I just asked each one the same simple question. Did Madison ask me before she put my name on it? None of them had an answer. The story they'd been told had skipped that part. That's how I knew what I was dealing with. The lie wasn't that I refused to pay. The lie was that anyone had ever asked. But here's what happens when you stop being the bank. The calls stop coming. No more broken water heaters. No more booted cars. No more a little short on the property tax. Because it turns out, when you take away the money, you find out very quickly what was actually holding the relationship together. In our case, it was the money. Only the money. I made my peace with that. It's been a little over a year now. Madison and I exchange polite messages on holidays, distant but not hostile. I think somewhere underneath all of it, she knows what she did. I don't need her to say it. She did try to apologize once, sort of. About 4 months after the wedding, she texted me, late at night, a long message. It wasn't really an apology, it was more of an explanation. She said she'd grown up being told the money was just there, that she never thought of me as a person she was taking from, only as a resource that existed. She said she was starting to see that maybe that wasn't fair. It was the closest thing to honesty she'd ever offered me. I read it 3 times. I wrote back 2 words, "Thank you." And I meant them. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because for the first time, my sister had looked directly at the thing instead of around it. That was worth something. It just wasn't worth $93,000. My mother and I speak rarely. The last real conversation we had, she said something that I think about a lot. She said, "I just don't understand how you could turn your back on your own family over money." And I realized she truly believed that. She believed I was the one who'd made it about money. I didn't argue. There's no point arguing with someone who spent 30 years deciding who you are. I just said, "I didn't turn my back, Mom. I just stopped opening my wallet. You're the one who decided those were the same thing." She didn't have an answer for that. I want to tell you what I learned. Not because I have it all figured out. I don't. But because if any of this sounds familiar to you, I want you to hear it. For 31 years, I believed that being the dependable one. The one who never asked for anything. The one who always paid, was how I'd finally earn my place in the family. It wasn't. I used to think love was something you earned by being useful. Pay enough, help enough, ask for little enough, and one day they'll look at you the way they look at the favorite. That was the bargain I made as a kid, and I kept paying into it for 31 years, like a man feeding coins into a machine that was never plugged in. You cannot buy your way into being loved. If they only call you when they need money, then it was never love. It was a subscription. And you're allowed to cancel a subscription. Here's the part I had backwards for most of my life. I always thought that if I said no, I would lose my family. That the no was the dangerous thing. That one refusal would bring the whole house down, but the house was already down. It had been down for years. The money was just the scaffolding holding up the appearance of it. I think about that sick afternoon when I was 12 sometimes. The cool cloth. The story. The one time I was the only one in the room. I spent decades trying to earn my way back to that afternoon, dollar by dollar. It took me 31 years to understand that you cannot buy back a single good afternoon. And you shouldn't have to. The people who love you don't make you pay rent on it. Saying no to my family didn't cost me my family. It just revealed how much of my family had only ever been a bill. I still send money sometimes to people who ask honestly, to people who say thank you, to my own savings, to a kid down the street whose parents are struggling and who the other day mentioned he'd love to learn piano. I'm paying for his lessons, $40 a week. It's the best money I've ever spent. So here's my question for you. If you stopped being the bank tomorrow, who in your life would still call? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and if this story hit close to home, you already know why. Some of the kindest people I know are just former family ATMs who finally turned the machine off. This story is a dramatization. Names, characters, and events are fictional and created for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.